Well, welcome everyone. For those of you who may not know me, I'm Judy Alden, currently the president of the HLAA-DC chapter. Thank you for your patience, those who are on time. That's always appreciated. But on a day like this, some folks may be, having to get in from outside because it's so nice out. First, let's be sure everyone's familiar with using Zoom so we can all communicate appropriately. We have a part captioner with us, Natalie. So if you go to the bottom of your screen, there's a number of icons. Go to the CC icon and click on that. You will be seeing cart captions. Everybody good with that? If not, let me know. And Rachel, not me, but Rachel, our technical guru, she can help you. Okay, and please mute yourself so we don't hear extraneous noises as we're listening to Lisa's presentation and each of us talking with her as she asks, comments and questions perhaps. I would request that you leave your video on if you can, because I think, among the challenges of Zoom, good news, bad news. Good news is, with captions, it's great to communicate. Bad news is it's difficult to create a sense of community when you're not with people. So if you turn on your video, please, we can see who you are and get to know one another. Thank you very much. And create that. Thank you, Lynn. Create that sense of community, man. Thank you. That's appreciated. Okay, at the bottom of your screen also are a number of icons for different things. I'm going to leave that up to Lise, our presenter, to let us know how she prefers to use those as we communicate with one another and interact. A couple of quick announcements. I promise there's just a few before today's program with Lise. Lise, by the way, is director, not by the way, Lise is director of public policy for HLAA. And so we're pleased to have her with us today to discuss the organization's priorities regarding public policy. First announcement, for those interested in learning more about the DC chapter, please go to our website. It's new, but under construction. So I'll post this in chat, HLAA-DC.org, where you will find information about past programs, upcoming programs and activities, a convenient link to our YouTube channel where all these Zoom programs for the chapter will be posted. If you missed a meeting, you can go back and check it out, be able to look at this one in a week or so, as well as our Facebook page. That address again, I'll post in chat. A word about HLAA membership and you. Your membership makes possible all these activities, not only these chapter meetings, but the good and important work that Lise does nationally with public policy. If you already joined HLAA and are a member, thank you for your membership. In addition to membership, please consider volunteering to help with the many chapter activities. We, the board here today, are Russ and Rachel, and they'll be speaking in a moment. We're a volunteer board, so all these activities are incumbent upon us to do, and we certainly welcome everyone's time and talent to help us with that. If you'd like information about volunteer opportunities at the chapter, please don't hesitate to let any board member know, or go to our website and make your requests known. We're delighted to talk with you about some ways in which you can help support the chapter, and by doing so, help our mission as well as yourself. The next major event we're hosting is the annual HLAA Walk for Hearing, and that will be in a couple of weeks. Rachel Stevens, who's the VP, Vice President of our chapter, leads the HLAA-DC team for that walk. And Rachel, could you please tell us more about that important event?
Sure. So the DC Walk for Hearing will be on Sunday, October 15th. And I'm going to post in the chat a link to sign up and register to join our team if you would like to walk with us. And also, if you're not able to make it that day, that's fine. You can also just donate to our team, which is very helpful because the donations that we receive allow us to put on these events throughout the years. It allows us to pay for captioning and the picnics or different social events that we have. That's where we get the majority of our funding is what we raise through the Walk for Hearing. So I just posted the link if you'd like to join our team. And then I'm also going to post a link if you would like to just make a donation, even if you can't attend yourself. So I'll post that in a second. And then Judy, you can go ahead. I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay, thank you. I was just entering something in chat. Let me just send it and I'm back with you. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Rachel. I've attended this with my family for the last, oh my goodness, 4, 5, 6 years. And it's always a wonderful event. It's fun. It's a major fundraiser. Everyone enjoys it. This year it's going to be at National Harbor, which is a beautiful venue. My 2.5-year-old grandson may be walking and doing part in a stroller, but he'll be out there. So, you know, everyone is welcome. And if you can't attend, please consider a donation. As Rachel said, the link also is a place where you can donate to this. I think that's all our announcements. Anyone else have an announcement before I move on? Okay, if not, Russ, to the featured program of the day. Russ is past HLAA-DC chapter president and kindly continues to manage all of our monthly programs. So Russ, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Judy. Before introducing our speaker, just a word about some future programs, HLAA-DC area programs. Our next one will be on Sunday, November 20th, and will feature Linda Kozma-Spytek of Gallaudet University. We'll be here talking about Auracast, an exciting new Bluetooth assistive listening system that enables provision of high quality audio for consumers with all levels of hearing ability in a wide range of public locations, including conference centers, movie theaters, transportation centers, places of worship, and more. That will be on November the 12th, Sunday. On December 3rd, Joe Duarte will be with us for an informal discussion about communication enabling devices and systems. Some of you may know Joe, and you know, he's an excellent speaker, and I think it'll be a great program and an opportunity to get questions, you know, answered. We're hoping, in addition, that this one will be actually in person, our first one since the beginning of the pandemic. It will be at the Tenleytown Library branch in their large conference room, which is looped, so that it is accessible for everyone. And we will, of course, in addition to the loop, also have cart provided. For those of you who are on our mailing list, you'll be receiving information about these and other programs that we do shortly. And if you're not on our list, but would like to be, so that you can receive notices of these and other programs that we sponsor, please visit our website. It's HLAADC.org. Signing up, you know, to receive information on a regular basis is really quite easy. One note about how we'll proceed today, and this is a question for our presenter, Lise Hamlin. Lise, would you prefer that people raise questions as they occur to them, or hold them, you know, until you're finished with the presentation?
So I actually like people to interrupt. So if they feel you need to either raise your hand or use the tool for hand raising, using the tool is often best because then I can see what order people did get in. But feel free also to put your questions in the chat and we'll get to them as we can. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Just let me add my welcome to Lisa. I think some of you may already know her, but for those who don't, she is, as I think Judy mentioned, HLAA's Director of Public Policy, working out of the association's national headquarters in Rockville. Lisa joined HLAA's national staff about 15 years ago. Prior experience includes work with the League for Hard of Hearing in New York City and the Northern Virginia Resource Center for Deaf and Hard of Hearing persons in Fairfax, Virginia. And with that, and no further ado, let me turn it over to Lisa. And thank you very much for doing this for us, Lisa.
Thank you, Russ. I'm happy to be here and happy to see everybody on this beautiful Sunday. So I'm not surprised at all that not everyone is here, but it's good to see those of you who are. As Russ said, I am the Director of Public Policy at Hearing Loss Association of America. I've been working in the field of hearing loss for over 35 years. So it's not just the 15 years or so that I've been with HLAA, but many other years that I've been working on advocacy, public policy, and looking to see what we can do for people with hearing loss who need access. Now, for HLAA, I have to say that advocacy is a critical part of what we do. We advocate for communication access nationally, in the workplace, transportation, telecommunications, public accommodations, employment, anywhere where you need access, we'll be looking at it. We'll be working on the issues as we see them. And a lot of what we do as an organization is work not so much in making new laws, although we have a few new laws this year that we are supporting, and I'll talk about that first. But we also work with regulators because once the laws are created, we want to make sure that the rules consider people with hearing loss and our perspective, and as well as other people with disabilities. But we certainly, from our expertise, we want to be at the table to ensure that people know what it is our needs are for under each particular law. So let me first talk about the legislative agenda that's up this year. We're working to see several laws, but the big push this year is going to be on the CVTA, which is the Communications, Video, and Technology Accessibility Act of 2023. Now, that was introduced by Senator Edward Markey and Representative Anna Eshoo last session of Congress, and it was reintroduced this session. We're planning to make a big push on it. It's been endorsed. It's not just for people with hearing loss. It has to do with telecommunications, and it'll be, for the most part, under the jurisdiction of the FCC. So we're looking at trying to make communication access move forward with technology. And so it covers people who are blind. So the American Council for the Blind and the American Foundation for the Blind also support this. And for deafness, for people who are deaf and hard of hearing, we have communications services for the deaf, the National Association for the Deaf, and telecommunications for the deaf and hard of hearing, except they just changed their name to TDI for access. So all of those folks have already endorsed, and we'll look for more organizations and more individuals to come on board to endorse it. And I will send a PowerPoint with this information, but one of the things you can find out more information about CVTA is there's a website called cvtaaccess.org. It doesn't have a www, it's https:// and then cvtaaccess.org. So you get a lot of information there. But again, I'll send my PowerPoint later, and then anybody who wants it can get it, or you can contact me directly. But let me tell you a little bit about CVTA and why we think it's important. One of the things it will do, its aim is to enhance communications over broadcast television, but also over the internet, because there's a lot of gaps. When we enacted CVAA, the first law that dealt with this, was that what we were doing is trying to take, we could see that the internet was starting to happen, but it was 2010, right? So it's a while ago. And we knew the rules were pretty solid for television captioning. So what we said is that everything that was on television, when it moved to the internet, should be captioned at least as well as it was on the internet. Well, guess what? Well, back then, YouTube, it was not a big deal, and they were specifically excluded from the law. But now YouTube has everything, and we want to see everything captioned. So this would look at the captioning rules, expand them to include internet access. And not only that, expand in ways, how do you turn on the captions? I don't know if you've tried it. I work on my computer all the time, and I look at videos all the time, and everybody has a different way of turning on the captions. Some of them are really good and easy to find, and some of them you struggle to find them. I also stream television over Fire TV, and that's just me. You could stream it under Roku or any number of different platforms, but it should, whatever platform you have, you should still find it easy. And if you have television, you have a remote. Now that with CVAA, the remote should have the captioning CC right on the remote, and some of them do. We want to make sure that that's consistent, because we've also seen some of the manufacturers of television say, there's not enough space on my remote, I'm not going to put the CC there. So we're going to emphasize that as well, that it should be easy to turn it on and off, to find how to configure it, because some people need to have different colors. If you have a vision loss instead, you might need to make the font larger or in a specific style, and the background and the foreground colors might make a difference to you. So we want all of that to be easily accessible. So the other thing we're going to say is that, say, FCC, you should be looking at the rules, and you should be looking at them periodically, not just, when we nudge you with a new law. It should be, for example, there are rules now with captioning for broadcast that say, well, between the hours of 2 a.m. and 5 a.m., you don't have to caption. Well, I guess what, again, there are lots of people who turn on the TV at 5 a.m. and want to know what's happening with the news. We need to be sure that everybody captions all the time. We need to look at, there's also exclusions if you're with how much money the entity is making before they have to caption, and the number of years they've been in service. So we say, look, FCC, we're not telling you what to do, but look at these rules and make sure that they are the rules you want to stay with now, that you were good back in 2010. Is it really the same situation? Because remember, we brought in captioning slowly, we had benchmarks, and now it should be 100% plus some Spanish language. And we're adding to the rules, again, for people who are low vision or are blind, we're adding audio description rules as well, that it should be expanded. We shouldn't be held back by the fact that there are very few channels now that provide them. We also want to look at quality standards. That's a big one too. Right now, the rules say that you must account for placement where it is on the screen. You must account for quality. You should be able to read the caption and understand them. They should not be far delayed. And the captioning should be complete from beginning to end of the programming. You should be able to see the captions. They shouldn't get cut off at the end because you're going to commercial. So those are in place now, but we're seeing that there's a lot of places where they could do better. And so looking at accuracy is another thing we were in this law that says, let's look at accuracy. Let's really make standards for people to live up to. That's not easy. It's not going to happen overnight, but it is something I think that it would be really helpful to have. The other piece that's in this law now, whether or not it stays, we'll see, is requirement for video conferencing. So right now, under the rules right now, it was not really clear how much or how many of these or even at all, whether video conferencing like Zoom or WebEx or BlueJeans, if they needed to be accessible. Because under the rules, it was a little fuzzy. They were using something called it was really arcane, but it was called interconnected video conferencing platforms. So the video conferencing said, oh, well, that doesn't apply to us. Recently, the FCC has put out an order that says, oh, yes, it does apply to you. Everything on video conferencing platforms should be accessible. But you know what? Because we haven't made a definitive ruling on this before, we're going to give you a year. So by next year, I believe it's in September of 2024, all these conferencing platforms must make them accessible. Audio description and I believe, I'd have to double check on that, but for sure captioning must be provided. They can be provided by automatic captionings, or even some platforms have no ability to bring them in. So I think WebEx is getting better, but for a while it was bad. And I would have to have a second screen open if we invited a captioner to come in. We'd have to have a separate URL, and I'd have to open a separate window or have a separate device. Now that captioner should be able to integrate like you're doing today with Zoom. So with everybody, all of them should do it. So because the FCC put that order out this year, that had also been included in this law. It may be taken out. I'm not sure. I don't know. I didn't write the law. I'm not Senator Markey's staff, so I don't know for sure. But I know that they're talking about how to make it more. Everything we do to make it smaller makes it easier for it to pass. So it may come out again, considering this order is going forward. And so far as I know, it has not been challenged. If it were challenged, that would be another reason to keep it in the law. But as it is now. Other things that we'll do, it's a big law, so there will be other parts of the law that I'm not going to go into because it doesn't affect us. Again, the audio description I haven't pulled out. There is a section for some people will be important too on access to 911, and I'm not getting into that either. And I see, Rachel, you have your hand up.
Yes, I was excited about what you said regarding the video conferencing apps, and I put the question into the chat as well. Does this mean that, for example, on Zoom, captions will be available even for free accounts and not just paid accounts?
Right. Yes, it does. Free accounts, it doesn't matter if you're providing a video platform, you must make it accessible. So, I mean, this includes telehealth, for example, which is my big issue, is that doctors don't think about technology. They think about what they have to do. And so they've just begun with COVID. We saw more doctors have to have video conferencing when they had to have somebody said, oh, I have COVID. I don't want to go into your office, but I want to, have prescriptions. And I want you to know that I have COVID and tell me what I need to do. So during that time, there were more video conferencing, but I have not run against one. And I've heard from people from around the country, nobody has said they were accessible. So
I think I had one doctor's appointment. Oh, sorry. I think I have one doctor's appointment where they had captions, like automatic captions. But other than that, any other telehealth appointment I've had, they haven't had captions. But for Zoom, I don't know if anybody else has encountered this, but the automatic speech recognition captions have to be enabled by the host in the settings on the back end before the meeting starts. And so there are a lot of times when other people are hosting a meeting when I'm at work, and I'm joining a Zoom call that somebody else is hosting, and they haven't enabled the captions, and then there's no CC button at the bottom. Is there going to be any change where that button is just always there? Whether or not, so it would be nice if that button were always there and it didn't need to be enabled. And people could just turn it on or off if they needed it. So that was my second question.
Okay, so when the FCC put out the order, they also had a notice of rulemaking. And in the rulemaking, they said they had several questions. One of the questions was, how should it work? So the order says you have to make it accessible. The notice says, let's ask the world, anybody who wants to comment, how to make it accessible, what should be included. And I joined other disability organizations and signed on to, it was drafted by the NAD, National Association of the Deaf. We signed on to it. And part of what they say is that that we are saying to the FCC is, yes, when you set up a video conferencing platform, it should be enabled, that those captions should be enabled by the user, not by the host. So however they want to set it up, whether it's always on and you have to turn it off, I mean, it's up to them, or you have a CC button, or it's just on, whatever they want to do, but it has to be enabled. It has to be the user, the person with hearing loss who needs it, has to enable it. Because you're right, I've run against several, more than one time, where the host had not a clue how to set it up, or not a clue how to turn it on, even if it was set up. So it's an issue, and it's definitely an issue that we talked about. Another issue, yeah, was somebody else saying something? I'm sorry. No? Okay. So another issue that came up, for example, is for some people, they prefer to have, or perhaps they need to have, relay operators, relay communication assistants brought in, rather than another form of either interpreting or captioning. So that was another question, and that will be looked at as well. It's again complicated for some of the reasons. I mean, it seems simple, and Sorensen has started to figure out a way to get their relay operators or relay interpreters brought into the platform so they can interpret for everybody. But there are questions. What if you have 3 different people from 3 different places, and one wants one VRS provider, one wants Sorensen, and one wants Z, another person wants IPCTS? How do you bring them all in technically? And does it make sense to have 2 interpreters at the same time? Who sees them? I mean, there are questions, and they have to be answered first. And that's part of this NPRM, this rulemaking, is to start asking these questions and trying to get the best answer so that we can go forward with access to these video conferencing platforms. Lynn, go ahead.
Yes, I into this conversation is very interesting because I've been having recent issues talking to the doctor over the phone, like receptionist mainly, when I'm making a call. And I discovered that most of my doctors, they don't really, I don't know if they are aware of captioning or like TTY, that kind of thing on their telephone system. So I just want to know, because some of the doctors, they do have TTY, but my question is, what number do you contact or their doctor's office pertaining to the TTY? I don't know whether I should be calling the TTY number and on some other doctors, they don't have TTY. They just have the regular telephone number for people who don't have hearing loss. So I don't know what to do in that matter.
Okay, so for TTYs, I have to say that TTYs are going to be disappearing. Not as many people use TTYs as used to. And so they're disappearing, not just from people who use them, but also from doctors' offices and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
If they do not have a TTY office, if your doctor does not have a TTY number in his office, then you need to use the relay system and go through a relay operator from your TTY, or you could use a caption phone. A caption phone is not
Mhm.
difficult to get, and it's
Mhm.
free. And you
Mhm.
could be, once you're registered, you could use that. It's a little bit faster. I can see you use your voice, so it's a little faster than using TTY, which tends to be slow, which is another reason why it's going the way, going
Mhm.
out of circulation. So those are the ways I think they would expect you. They should be able to do it. They're not required to provide a TTY. They're required to provide access. If they refuse a call, it comes in through TTY, then they're in violation. So if it comes through the relay system, and they refuse that call, that's a violation. But if they accept your call, if it's through either they can do direct
Yeah.
TTY, and that's great, or
Mhm.
they could say they'll take it through the relay system, and that's acceptable. But they can't just say, no, I'm not taking your call because you're deaf. They can't do that.
Mhm.
Okay, does that answer your question?
Yeah, yeah, and also one last thing was I have an iPhone. I'm hard of hearing. I'm not deaf or anything. I have, hard of hearing problems, but far as my iPhone, I don't know whether I need an upgrade or anything on my iPhone, but I've been having a lot of issues hearing on my iPhone, and I don't have captions on it. It's just my phone is not really updated, and I've been having issues understanding on the phone.
Okay,
So I
so
may need an upgrade or that kind of thing.
iPhones are pretty good, and you could also download an app that's a
Mhm.
captioning app
Mhm.
from one of the providers. And I don't know if all of the providers have access to IPCTS, but I think they do. So you could get captions in your
Mhm.
phones. I
Mhm.
use it all the time. It's the only way I take a phone call. The other thing I know, well, you would have to have, no, you don't. You should check to see if your iPhone has Bluetooth, so you could go directly to your hearing aids if you have hearing aids.
Mhm.
And your hearing aids have Bluetooth connectivity, then you could also hear as much as you can, as well as using the captions. So those are things to think about, but you have to download the app to the iPhone, and you have to check your iPhone and see if you have Bluetooth, and check your hearing aid to see if you have Bluetooth. So I use it all together. Now that I have Bluetooth with my hearing aids and my cell phone, I use Android, but it's the same idea.
Right. Mhm.
Hearing directly from the phone was huge, made a huge difference for me. Wes, did you
Okay.
have something you wanted to add to this?
I'm sorry, yeah. Oh, no, I actually, didn't want to add to it, but I did have another question, about CVTA, which is a general question, just basically is what is its status and what is the prognosis? Is Congress are they favorably inclined? Do we know? Is this likely to happen? Do we have any projected time frame and such? What do you think?
Okay, let me just make sure. Lynn, did I answer all of your questions there? Are you okay?
Yes, I'm okay.
Okay, good.
Thank
I
you.
just wanted to make sure.
Mhm.
Okay, so CVTA. So Congress is a complex place these days. I was sure there was going to be a shutdown, and we don't have a shutdown. So here's what we're
Yes.
doing. This coming year, we're going to make a big push. Nothing's going to happen fast, okay? But we are going to make a push this year. What we're missing is Republicans, because it was introduced by Senator Markey. We have some Democrats. We need more. And our push from the consumer side is to tell people to go talk to their representatives and start talking it up. But I will say, we're planning we have an executive committee, and we're planning to strategize and meet in the coming months, this month. And then going forward, we'll see. I'll be able to have a more cogent answer to what you have, I hope, a plan forward to getting more Republicans on and seeing what the lay of the land is. Right now, I can tell you, we've already had people reach out to their senators, and they're like, eh. So we need to drum up some more interest in this, it's on us to do that, and we will. And it's also Senator Markey's office has to do it, Representative Eshu's office has to do it, and we'll see, we'll see how we go forward. But I wouldn't expect anything to happen with this, although again, expectations can change, but not at least until next year. And next year is an election year, so if it doesn't happen early, probably won't happen until the next Congress. That's my guess. Okay. Okay, do we have any other questions? Okay, so I think, yeah, that's pretty much what I had to say. Just in general, there's more information. It's a big bill, so you can look up on that website to see more. The next thing I was going to ask for is people to talk to their representatives. Again, the more they hear from us, even if they don't have an opinion yet, the more they begin to think, well, maybe I should have an opinion. It's probably going to get attached to something else next year if it flies next year, but we'll see about that. We are also, there's other pieces of legislation that we're not going to make as big a push on, but we want to let you know that we support. If you're interested in, we can give you more information. Senator Markey also introduced the Disability and Age in Jury Service Non-Discrimination Act. So this is an act that would prohibit exclusion from federal jury duty anyone on account of either disability or age. So that's a small, short piece of legislation, and we support that. We don't want to see people excluded for any reason because of their disability, and certainly age as well. We also support the Medicare Hearing Aid Coverage Act of 2023, introduced by Representative Debbie Dingell. This is a perennial. We got really close with the Build Back Better Act, but when that fell apart, we lost Medicare coverage of hearing aids. So we keep looking at it, we keep working at it, we're listening, we'll see if there's anything it attaches to. If it heats up, we'll let you know. Right now, it's just a matter of she puts it on the books, and she's, as I said, she's done this regularly. And so we'll see, we'll just have to wait and see where it goes. We also support the Websites and Software Applications Accessibility Act that was introduced by Senator Tammy Duckworth and U.S. Representative John Sarbanes. Now, this act clarifies that it's unlawful under the ADA to maintain inaccessible websites and applications that exclude or discriminate against people with disabilities. This is being championed by the blindness community because websites are hugely inaccessible to people who are blind. We're signing on to support them. We support access to people with disabilities, but we also are saying, hey, don't forget about captions. You make something audible, it ought to be captioned as well. So we support that. We'll have to see again with this Congress whether or not that moves forward. At the moment, Department of Justice is also working on the same kind of rules, specifically on for government, state and local government rules, so that their website should be accessible under that. We just filed comments again, signing on to comments that were from CCD, which is a consortium of consumers with disabilities, I believe. I might have that acronym wrong, but it's CCD. They put together some good comments, and we signed on to that as well. And the other piece of legislation we're supporting is ALLIES Act, which was introduced by U.S. Senator Shelley Moore Capito and U.S. Representative Joe, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, Neguse Neguse, maybe, I don't know. At any rate, this act ensures private insurance companies cover bone-anchored hearing systems and cochlear implant systems for both children and adults. So we are supporting that. That has been, who is promoting that is AAA, which is the American, my acronyms, I'm getting lost in my acronyms here. This is the audiology group. So it's Association of Audiologists, American Association of Audiologists. I think that's right. At any rate, we were supporting that to see, because we have seen Medicare does cover one cochlear implant. We'd like to see more from them, but we'd also like to see, and we haven't had a lot of trouble with that, but bone anchored devices often get overlooked. Medicare doesn't cover that, and many private insurers do not cover bone anchored device, so we support that as well. So that's the legislation that we're working on. Now, let me tell you a little bit about some of the things we're doing with regulations, which I started talking about with the video conferencing platforms. And I think I pretty much covered it with what I was going to talk about that, because, and again, here's something I really want you to know as well. Even though the rules for the FCC don't go into effect until next year, so that looks at the platforms themselves. So Zoom, you have to make your platforms accessible. WebEx, you have to make your platforms accessible. But when you go to your doctor and you have a teleconference, you can right now say, I have a disability, I need captions. You must provide them, not under this rule, not under the FCC, but under the Americans with Disabilities Act. You are supposed to make my contact with you, whether I walk into your office or use a video conferencing, under the ADA, you're supposed to provide access. So people will trot out all the time HIPAA as an excuse not to provide access. It is an excuse. HIPAA does nothing to do with providing access. HIPAA is when, there was one provider, I guess the Good Health, I don't know how you categorize them. So they, Good Health drugs, Good Drugs, I guess it was called, provided you a card and you could get your prescription drugs for less, right? So they took all kinds of people's information and then they started selling it. That's HIPAA. When you sell my information without my permission, then HIPAA kicks in and says, oh, no, you cannot do that. Or if a doctor takes his list of patients and starts selling it to the drug company, that's HIPAA. It is not, can I provide access? So not only does the Americans with Disabilities Act kick in, the Affordable Care Act and the Rehab Act all make sure that you can get access by captioning, by an interpreter, whatever you need in a doctor's office and through telehealth or face-to-face conversations, but you have to complain. And if you don't complain, they don't know anything's going on. So we wish, that's the one thing from this community, I wish they would do more. Even if you don't know for sure, they'll let you know, no, you can't complain here, you can't go to the FCC for an ADA question, but they will tell you where to go. So it's really important to do that. You could also ask, I do this all the time, I call up the ADA network, which is the regional networks, and what they're busy doing is telling people, well, yes, this applies, or no, that doesn't apply. So for example, I called them up recently because somebody said, well, I live in a senior center, a senior facility, a residential facility like Leisure World, and I want my public areas to be looped. Is that the ADA? And no, it's not. So I had him confirm this because somebody made me think, well, maybe I'm wrong, but no, it's not the ADA, but you can have access under the Fair Housing Act. So even that, and the truth is that isn't that important, except if you go to court. So if you want to go to court, you want to file under the right law. But if you're just saying, no, I'm entitled to access, I'm a person with a disability, for senior residential facilities that don't let people in from the outside, it's not a public accommodation. So that's fair housing. If you're going to a public accommodation, a theater, or if the senior housing rents to a local theater group that anybody in the world can come in, then it's the ADA. So just know you have access. And if you're not sure, just ask. There are people who know this stuff and you should ask them. Okay, so that's something we're working on. The other thing we're working on is the Air Passengers with Disabilities Bill of Rights. Now, this comes under the Air Carrier Access Act, which is yet a different law. ACAA was made before the ADA, so it's structured a little differently. And when you go to an airport, it's complicated. So when you walk into the airport and it's all these public places where you can eat and restaurants and buy stuff, that's the ADA. If you don't get access in those places, that's the ADA. But when you go to the ticket counter or the information counter that belongs to an airline or the gate or baggage, that's the Air Carrier Access Act. And they have specific rules. So what the rules say, in fact, is that you should be provided equal access. So if you cannot hear the announcements at the gate, you can go to the gate and say, I can't hear the announcements. What they're supposed to do is walk up to you and tell you exactly what happened with the announcements. They don't do that. So instead, you can say, I would like to pre-board so I know I won't miss my plane. They can do that and will do it. I've never had a problem with that. They will pre-board without any question at all in the places that I've gone. I always, though, check and say, when I'm getting my ticket, I check and say, I have a hearing loss. Usually it's deaf. It usually says, are you deaf? Check deaf. And then they know that you have let them know in advance that you have a disability and you should be accommodated under the Air Carriers Access Act. Now, recently, there's a working group with the Air Carriers Access Act that said, you know what, people don't know their rights. So I don't know how many of you people saw the blog that we wrote several months ago. There was a woman who was flying from Florida. She landed in Austin, Texas, and she had a layover before her connecting flight to California, I think, or Seattle. She missed the plane because she was wearing hearing aids and she didn't hear what was going on. So what happened was, when she missed the plane, she became very agitated. And she called her cousin. Her cousin said, well, I'm on a plane that's just about to go. Why can't you get on my plane? Well, she couldn't get on the plane because the doors had closed, but she became very agitated. When she became agitated, she started saying, well, I can't hear anything. I'm going to sit here. And then something happened that's not really clear to me. This was in the news, but this whole situation just disintegrated, and she was arrested, taken to jail. It was a Friday, so she couldn't get out until Monday. In the process, she was a frail older woman. In the process, they broke her wrist and didn't get into the hospital until that Monday either. So it was a mess. My feeling is that regardless of what else was happening, if either the airline or the woman with the hearing loss knew about her rights, she could have pre-boarded and got on the plane. Even if they changed gates, they could have said, oh, we're changing gates. But she did not know her rights, and she ended up in jail, which is bad. So we are pushing out this Bill of Rights. You'll see some, now that there's no shutdown, there should be a press release coming out on Monday, coming from the Department of Transportation. They have a whole website with videos on it explaining what the Bill of Rights are and your access to airports. And there are 10 sections, and they explain the whole, each section has an explanation with it. So I would encourage you to know your rights when you're going to the airport and knowing, and remember, this is even with baggage. Don't forget that it's not just at the gate, although that's hugely important. You can also, if there's a problem with baggage, you're also supposed to be accommodated. So that's that piece that we're working on. There's also actually associated with that. So when the shutdown happened, and I don't know the bottom line here, the FAA was also getting reauthorized at the same time. When everything was happening with the shutdown, we saw, it looks like the FAA reauthorization has also been pushed for another 3 months. If that's true, rather than a continuing resolution for the next 3 months, if that's true, we're working to get amendments to the FAA authorization to allow for the Air Carrier Access Act Bill of Rights to be incorporated for other disability actions. Like, we'd like to see in the law says that when you're on an airplane, the in-flight entertainment is accessible. So it should have captions. It should be accessible. It shouldn't be that you have to hunt around for whatever in-flight you have. We would also like to see, but this is again, not a slam dunk, but we want to see it in there, is that announcements on an airplane should be accessible. Now, we worked on this in 2015 with a negotiated rulemaking that went nowhere. But we talked to some airlines, and some airlines, not all of them, but some of them said, what about if we have information that's canned? So we know when you go to Reagan Airport, you're not supposed to stand up for the 30 minutes before you land, right? That could be on a screen. There could be the written text that says, we're announcing now, keep your seat for the next 30 minutes until we're in the airport. There are other things that could be announced. Whatever they know in advance, this flight will take X numbers of hours, whatever it is. They're not required. The only thing they're required to do is if they have a video, that's the emergency video that tells you what you're supposed to do in an emergency, that must be captioned. Everything else, there's no rules about. So we'd like those rules in. The problem with the announcements that says, oh, we're coming into gate 15 and the connecting flights are going to A7 and B, whatever. Those kinds of announcements would have to be done in real time. That automatic speech recognition does not do well in noise, but we've never tested it. We wanted to test it, but it never happened. We'd like to see a study that says, maybe if we had a way to muffle the sound that the speech recognition could capture it. I don't know, but we have to test that kind of thing. We'll never get there. So there is a movement afoot to do it. And we might be able to get those kinds of amendments in. We don't know. It's up in the air, but we're looking at it. If it can be done, there are people working on it. I have to give a lot of credit to PVA, Paralyzed Veterans Association. They work a lot on mobility access, and there are real issues with that too. That's another whole subject, but they also have welcomed other people with other disabilities in a coalition that looks at, well, what needs to be updated for the ACAA and for possibly incorporating in the FAA reauthorization. So that's what's going on that. I saw somebody come up on their video. I think it was Deborah. Did you have a question? Maybe not. Okay. Okay, any other questions about that? Okay, now I'm going to shift gears again. The other thing we've been working on is the hearing aid compatible cell phones. So that's also under the FCC. So hearing aid compatibility to this point has been benchmarked so that a certain number of phones needed to be hearing aid compatible. Right now, we're at 85% of all phones that are sold must be hearing aid compatible. So what I mean by that is that you can bring it to your ear and just use the microphone on your hearing aid, or you can engage your telecoil. That's what's in the rules right now. So we worked with a task force that looked at all different kinds of ways of how we can move forward. And we said, one of the things we said to the FCC, we had a report that we just gave last December. And in the report, we said, we think that we should have 100% of phones that are sold, when you bring them to the ear and use your microphone, that should be hearing aid compatible. Let's not even talk about it anymore. All phones should just be compatible when you bring them to the ear. And that seems doable. And the industry, the hearing aid, the cell phone industry is good with that. And remember these, even though we're talking about two things, we're talking about the device, the hearing aid or the cochlear implant, and we're talking about the phone. The FCC only has jurisdiction over the phone. So that's what we're talking about with hearing aid compatibility. And we invited the hearing aid industry in, so because we have to talk to each other, but it does not have, we have no, FCC has no way to tell the hearing aid industry what to do, but we do want them to know what's going on. So that piece of the rules, everybody seems happy with that. We also said there is, I don't know how much people are aware, but telecoils is something that the hearing aid industry is not in love with. The cell phone industry is not in love with. There's several reasons for that. I don't know why in the end we have had such a struggle with telecoils, because they in some cases work really well. Although I have to say, when I was working with my own phone on the telecoil, I had a terrible time hearing. I hear much better with Bluetooth. So we recommended to the FCC, keep the benchmark for telecoil as it is now, 85%. No fewer than 85% can connect with a telecoil. And then if you don't have a telecoil in the phone, if you don't have telecoil connectivity to the phone itself now, then you must have Bluetooth. And if you have, and then, so you must have one or the other, Bluetooth or telecoil. That meant with 85%, I mean, you only require, the industry was only requiring, we recommended, only requiring 15% of the phones would be Bluetooth, have Bluetooth connectivity. Now, I hesitated at that agreement, but the truth is people love Bluetooth. I am really not too worried about the industry creating, they can go above and beyond the rules. They don't have to stay at that level. This is just baseline. So they could create more phones with Bluetooth connectivity. And the truth is that's where it's going. The ability to connect to Bluetooth has just increased enormously. And when I was saying about the iPhone, for example, what happened with iPhone when they started, what they said, they went to the hearing aid industry and said, hearing aid industry, how about we make a phone that has our particular Bluetooth brand of Bluetooth. So they have a proprietary version they call it MFI, and you have to have a made for Apple hearing aid to connect to your Bluetooth. But they have started including a second ability in the iPhone to connect also to what's called the ASHA, which is another format for Android phones. So now you don't have to have an iPhone. You don't have to connect only to you don't have to have a made for hearing aid, made for iPhone hearing aid anymore. You can connect to either stream that's coming from your hearing aid, as long as the hearing aid does have ASHA or iPhone connectivity. They tend to have both at this point because they don't want to leave anybody out. But you should always check and ask them. I tell them what kind of phone do you have, and can you connect with your hearing aid when you're buying a new hearing aid, and make sure your phone can connect. If you prefer Bluetooth, find out that it can connect to the kind of hearing aid you have. So, and they're different. So you have to check first. So that's what we recommended. We don't know. The FCC is now looking at our recommendations. There's a third thing that's coming up this year, which is also connecting, having standards for volume control. So that's in the new rules too. So we didn't put benchmarks with that because we don't know, it's brand new. We don't know what to say yet, but we said, FCC, you should think about this. We should definitely have some benchmarks, but we don't know how many we need, what percentage. So they're looking at all that, and I have no idea how long it'll take them to come up, probably with a notice of rulemaking, and we'll comment again and go forward with what happens with connectivity to your cell phone. Okay, yeah, Judy.
Thanks, Lise. Thank you for all the information and processing. I currently have hearing aids with Bluetooth and T-coil. Is that kind of, from what I understand, having both those options is probably not something the hearing aid industry is going to be pursuing?
So I think from what I can, so let me make sure I understand what you said, that you're saying, you're asking if the hearing aid industry is going to stay with both telecoil and Bluetooth for a while.
I use both.
Right. So do I. So I don't use it with my cell phone anymore, but when I go into a room that's looped, I use my telecoil. So that's one of the reasons we wanted to tell the industry, yes, we're still using it. There's no similar group for the hearing aid industry, but they were there and they hear us when we say that there are people who are dependent on their telecoil. Now, what you're going to hear in November from Linda Cosmas-Spitek about this new version of Bluetooth is a non-proprietary form of Bluetooth. So we think the hearing aid industry is going to like it. They have been involved in it. I don't want to steal Linda's thunder, but it's something that they like Bluetooth, and this next version seems to cover all bases, but it's going to take a while. Not only that, people don't buy hearing aids every year. You know, they tend to buy them 5-6 years. So they may not have that connectivity. So they need to have a telecoil for the interim. We think that the hearing aid industry is not going to make consumers wildly unhappy by getting rid of the telecoil anytime soon, although we do know that there's some devices, like the smallest devices that are totally in the canal, that's a really tough telecoil situation. But for the more powerful behind the ear, and even the receiver in the canal, which is a more moderate hearing loss, we've been seeing that continue with telecoil. But I can't speak for the industry. But what I'm hearing, what I heard at the convention was there's still a commitment to telecoil use for, I would say, at least 5 to 10 years. I would say, without, using my crystal ball here, which may be fuzzy, that's what I believe they will do. But I think they also will want to phase it out at some point. They will sunset that telecoil.
You answered my question. Your crystal ball is always appreciated, fuzzy or not.
I try. Okay, any other questions on that? Okay, you also have to watch the clock for me because I don't know how long do you go until? Am I okay still for time?
You're fine on time.
Okay.
So
Okay. Okay, so the next issue I'm going to talk about is caption phones. Now, caption phones have been around for 20 years, and yet there are no standards for quality. It's an issue that's bugged me for years. You should be able to pick up that phone and have a certain level of quality and a certain confidence that you'll be able to talk to somebody else independent on those captions. The FCC has not moved on it until recently. So right now I'm part of, and we are part of, HLA is part of, so are some research groups from Gallaudet and MITRE. And there are other research, I think RIT as researchers, as well as the industry, the providers, and we're getting together to say, how do you make sure that the captions are quality captions? How should we measure them? And what should the standards be? Now, this is again, not an easy proposition, because there are lots of different ways to say your captions are accurate. There are even different ways to say it's whether or not it's delayed. Where do you start from? Do you start when somebody's speaking, or when they pick up the phone? Where do you end? Do you end at syllable? I mean, it's like when people get into the weeds with this, they really get into the weeds. And when you're talking about accuracy too, if you measure accuracy by deciding how many words are correct, well, what if somebody spells out 5 o'clock, you say 5 o'clock, or say 5:00. Does that mean one's right and the other's wrong? missing words. Some missing words mean nothing. If I don't put in is that bad? Is that a missing word or not? So it's complicated. It's not an easy thing to do, or they would have done it before. But it can be done, and it should be done. Something should be done. We have to create at least a baseline, not only because of the captions. What's happening with IPCTS, for people who don't know, is that they're essentially using speech recognition, but they're using, most of the providers are using human-assisted speech recognition. So we all know speech recognition makes mistakes. Sometimes they make a lot of mistakes, depending on the accent of the person, the noise in the room. If it's lyrics and music, forget it. You're not going to get anything from ASR. But with a human assist, you can correct some of the mistakes on the fly. Still not perfect, but better than nothing at all, and it could be better than some of the ASR products. Some of the ASR companies, there are some companies now providing captioned phones that are fully ASR. They have no human assist at all. So we want them all, no matter what technique. And one of the captioning companies is using real-time captioners as well as ASR, and it gives you the ability to switch back and forth between ASR, automatic speech recognition, and CART in this case. So all of that's good, but they need to all be at the same level, baseline, same baseline. They can go above and beyond, but they can't go below. But we need to set that baseline before they know what they're doing. Now, all the caption companies are currently testing their own and saying, oh, we're wonderful. We're doing great. But we don't know. First of all, they're all using different measures. So how can we compare them to each other? And secondly, how do we know that? I remember years and years ago, I was talking to one company, and they were saying they count, in order to figure out if their service was accurate, they counted the numbers of words that were right, but they didn't count the number of words that were missing. So they could lose a whole paragraph and still say, oh, I'm 100%. So we really need to, the FCC understands this, and we're working together, and we'll provide a report at the end of the year. And then probably this, again, is not going to happen tomorrow. This can happen over time. And then it'll go to a standards making body, and then we'll have something in there. But at least it's moving, which it wasn't doing for the longest time. So I'm happy to see that the FCC sees this as important and wants to make sure that the captioning is done well. So that's happening too. And I think my second to last thing is over-the-counter hearing aids. I'm going to do this very briefly because most of our chapters are people with more significant hearing loss than the people who will use over-the-counter hearing aids. And we talked about this a bit last year too, but I just want to keep you up to speed. Now, as a reminder, over-the-counter hearing aids are for adults, not children, whose hearing loss is they themselves perceive their hearing loss as mild to moderate. So they're not people who have real significant hearing loss, certainly not for me. I'm wearing a cochlear implant and a hearing aid and a power aid, so I could never use some of these. But it is another way to get a hold of a hearing aid, and hopefully at less cost, because you can get them online. You can get them at a big box store, you can get them at a pharmacy, and you don't have to go to an audiologist at all. So we support that as another way to create not just a less expensive, but access. Because what we were finding is people didn't know how, okay, I have a hearing loss, so what do I do? Who do I go to? Even if they went to the doctor and they'd say, okay, you should go to an audiologist, they would say, well, which audiologist? Who am I going to? Are you referring me one? Are they good? Are they bad? Are they far away? In some parts of the country, there are no audiologists. I mean, literally, there's like Wyoming, good luck. So this is a way to provide hearing aid, and we think it's important for people to get access to hearing aids no matter what. So that happened last year. The marketplace opened up in October of 2022. We'll be actually putting out some information in the coming weeks as we get into the anniversary, the first anniversary. We have not heard bad things. No, that we haven't had like been inundated by people who say, oh, this is terrible, as bad things are going on. In fact, we've heard very little at all on it. What we found when we looked last year, we took a look at the websites. We were concerned back there because a lot of the websites didn't have a whole lot of information on them. They were just selling. They were advertising. They were saying, buy our product, we're wonderful, without providing really the basic information that the FDA requires that they provide. But they didn't. The problem was the FDA can say, we want this on the box, and then the manufacturer must do that. But the FDA has no oversight on the online. This is like a big hole that we didn't recognize. So you go to Amazon. FDA has no oversight over Amazon, nothing to do with that. So we are here to say, and we still have pages on our website that say, buyer beware. Do your homework. If you're going to get it for less money because you're getting it directly, then do your own homework. It's on you to do your own homework. We will provide information and ideas and resources, but you need to do your homework. Or if you're not comfortable doing that, then go to an audiologist, go to a hearing instrument specialist, go to somebody to help you along. It's one or the other. You can't have it both ways. And we also tell people, if somebody offers them a $25 hearing aid, that's not going to work. That's not really a hearing aid. So buyer beware also. Look at prices and look at what they're telling you and do your homework to see what works for you. Ross, you have your hand up.
Yes, I'm just wondering, I've heard differing opinions, recognizing that the FDA is basically has no police authority. They really don't and can't have considerable oversight. But is there any inclination that is there any evidence of widespread misrepresentation, i.e., devices appearing on the market as over-the-counter hearing aids when in fact they are not? I mean, it's theoretically an issue because there isn't a whole lot of oversight. I'm wondering whether in reality is that a real issue?
Right. So when the marketplace first opened up, we were hearing a lot from Hearing Industries Association that were saying, oh, there's this guy doing this bad thing and that guy doing that bad thing. We also looked on the website ourselves and said, oh, these are people, there's some fly-by-night companies out there misrepresenting themselves. But that seems to have settled down a little bit. Some of these guys have gone out of business, or at least we're not hearing it. The FDA is interested in hearing it because part of the law has to, I believe they have to provide a report to Congress saying, hey, it's working, this is working or not. So they want to know what's going on. That you're right, they are not a policing body. They don't do that. On the other hand, if something really significant happens to the device itself, it blows up, it doesn't work at all, then you can tell the FDA that this device is really not what it should be. If it's a marketing thing, then you go to the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, and you say, hey, they marketed this, but it's not the real thing. The FTC, though, hasn't taken a lot of interest in this subject. They were several years ago, right before OTC came out, before the law came out, they were really involved. But I haven't seen real interest from them since then. Nonetheless, again, complain if you see something. But I haven't seen a lot of dialogue on this recently. Again, I used to see things from HIA all the time. HIA is the Hearing Industries Association, which is the trade association from hearing aid manufacturers, who are real skeptical. But now part of it is that the industry themselves can make these devices very easily. I mean, they're in the business, so they can make a low-end product and sell them online too. So I think that's part of the reason they backed away. But I haven't, it doesn't surprise me that one competition is where you find where people are doing the wrong thing. They'll point to their competitor and say, hey, these guys are not doing the right thing. That's okay with me if it's honest and it's like they're really doing the wrong thing. But I don't know of it. I can't say for sure that it's not happening. I can only say that I haven't heard it happening.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else? Okay, so the only other thing I wanted to mention is our work on technology. We have started up the grant-funded program called the Industry Consumer Alliance for Accessible Technology, and the acronym is ICAT, ICAAT. What this is, and I would encourage people to go to our website. We have a page on our website that looks at, you could probably just use a web browser or Google it, Google ICAAT, or I think it's that will get you to our website, HLAA ICAT, or you can go to, I think it's Alliance for Access to get there directly. In any case, what it is it's a online discussion board, an online place where consumers can meet members of industries who are creating any kind of product. It doesn't have to be a hearing product, doesn't have to be a hearing aid or an OTC or even a listening device. It could be a refrigerator that talks and you want to make it accessible, or a stove that you want to have the alarm ring in a way that you can actually hear it or light up when the bell goes off. So it's all kinds of industries. Industry has been really receptive to this and really involved. We'd like to see more consumers and have more discussion on our discussion board. We expect and have had a few members of industry say what they could do is say, we want to test out a product and we need some people from the community of people who have a hearing loss. So they can post something and said, we're doing a study on this, we're doing a focus group, we're doing whatever, and you could be a part of it. So they post that on our website and then people go off and talk to each other. We don't do anything with their studies or their focus groups. All we do is connect the people. And we see great promise in it. We'd like to see more consumers and more action on that site, people talking about things. So I would encourage you to come to the ICAT site and check it out. We also have a lot of information there, both from consumer perspective and from industry perspective. So that's my presentation. I'm willing to talk about anything else, public policy that has to do with the hearing loss, or if we've run out of questions, that's okay too. But I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Lisa. I guess we're open for questions. So Lisa, I just make one comment. We actually did last year have a presentation on ICAT. Linda did it, and actually, although she'll be back with us in November, the 12th, I think, as I mentioned at the beginning, to talk about something else about Auracast, I mean, yeah, she's probably would be very happy to promote, more consumer participation in ICAT, as well. Questions? I guess we're open. You can raise your hand, or you can, we're actually a pretty small group. I mean, I assume, just start your question if you have questions. Well, maybe we've had them all answered. I don't know.
Yeah, I think because we were taking them as we were going, people asked them when they thought of them. So that's fine. That's good.
Well, in that case, Judy, I would like to thank you, Lisa. I think this is terrific. A lot of information. And let me also thank Natalie, for, as usual,
Natalie.
high quality captioning. And Judy, do you have further things you want to add?
Judy, you're muted.
I stand corrected. I would just underscore Russ. If you think back after all these years, I would know that, but what can I say? After all, I just wanted to underscore what you said, Russ, and thank Natalie, our captioner, very much. And Lise, such a wealth of knowledge that you share with us. And I can't go into an airport or see a doctor and not think about all the good work you're doing to make those of us with hearing loss have better day-to-day lives. So thank you for all the work you're doing. That's appreciated. And thank you everyone for joining us today. Russ, I think those are my only comments.
Okay, well, listen, thank you again, Lisa, and thank you again, Natalie, and thank you all for coming. I hope you found it useful. I know I certainly did. So I guess we'll call it a day. Thanks so much.
Thank you.